What's going on, everybody? We are back. We are live with episode number 74 of the Club and Sub podcast. We are two cards away from the end of the year, so hopefully we'll finish it strong. Can't really get much worse than it did last week for most of the hosts of this podcast. But yeah, as usual, we're brought to you guys by betonline.ag. For 50% bonus on your first $1,000 deposit, use the promo code CLUBSUB. And if you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. And tonight, he has graced us with his presence. We got Clint, from the host of the Diehard MMA podcast. He is going to be helping us out here. Clint, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Love hanging out with you guys. Appreciate the call, having me here on the show. I'm ready to talk some fights. Let's do this thing.
Nice. And then, as usual, we got Lags at Danny_Lags. Luke, he is back from about with COVID. Luke, how are you feeling?
Getting there, man. About 90%, but yeah, it kicked my ass. So I felt like shit the last couple weeks, and my betting results have also matched it. So hopefully we can get back on track here.
And you got me, John, at MMA Fox. And yeah, so with that, we're going to hop right into it. First fight of the night, we got Jillian Robertson, Priscilla Cachoeira. I bet Jillian early in the week or 2 weeks ago at like minus 275. I guess for me, it's like I guess I can kind of see the catch angle, which is her catching her. The thing for me is I just don't really think she has the wrestling to keep the standing. And I mean, Jillian Robertson is not Gina Mazzani. Like, she has a very, very good top game. If she gets the positions on catch that Mazzani got, she's probably going to finish her. Or, worst case scenario, kind of hold her down. Like, to me, this is the Courtney Casey fight all over again, except Courtney Casey is a competent striker and also has a jiu-jitsu game, whereas Cachoeira, she's a big hitter, doesn't really have much fundamental striking, and doesn't have any jiu-jitsu or takedown defense to speak of. So, I mean, unless she gets caught coming in, it's just really hard for me to see how Cachoeira wins this fight. I don't really think Jillian has any gas tank issues. She's grappled a hard 15 many times before. So, yeah, I think she's going to finish. I like Jillian a decent amount here. Clint, what do you think?
I actually took the dog shot on this one, man, and it breaks my heart to go against my girl Jillian Robertson. It's kind of surreal to see the entire betting community backing her as a minus 400 favorite when just, the last 2-3 fights in a row, they've mocked her for even being even money. So it's a little weird. I just think this is a spot where we have seen Jillian, she falls apart if the fight is not going her way. She's a good hammer. She's not a great nail. And she's taking on Cachoeira, who, while, like you mentioned, her takedown defense isn't spectacular. She's big, man. She's big. She's strong. And every single fight starts on the feet. Jillian has to close the range to get this fight done, and that means she's got to get within punching distance, and that's the one place where Cachoeira can hit her coming in, hit her going out. And if she wobbles Jillian, guys, it's over. Like, Jillian just falls apart if she hits one bad shot. She does not react well to getting hit. So at this redonkulous line, plus 320, I had to take a stab at it. I hate going against Jillian. I think she's the rightful favorite. I just think the line's a little out of control, and maybe it is a puncher's chance, but if anybody's got the puncher's chance, it's Cachoeira.
Lags, what do you think?
So I think similar to you, I think obviously Jillian should be a huge favorite here, but I don't really like the fact that, like Clint mentioned, the size that she's giving up here and the fact that she just doesn't like getting hit on the feet really. Like, obviously she minimizes those exchanges really well. I think that she can get a lot of tops on here and probably get a finish, but I just don't love the strength from her, and I just don't love the fact that she just gets hit a lot on the feet. So I think I would play the under 2.5 if I was going to do anything on this fight.
Yeah, that's fair. What are your thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, I actually had Jillian parlayed up with Brendan Allen from last week, but that obviously busted. So I don't have technically action on this fight. I am considering the Jillian inside the distance around like evens though. I'm more so kind of with you, John. I think it's a pretty bad style matchup for Cachoeira. I think like over 70% of Robertson's fight time in the UFC has been spent grappling, and of that 70%, she's in control positions about 68% of the time. Just with how easy the takedowns came for Mazzani, and they even came in the second round as well. I just don't really see why Robertson can't land takedowns. She obviously has an elite level top game. Molly McCann even got to Cachoeira's back. We obviously saw what Shevchenko did. So we do have a long sample of Cachoeira not looking particularly good on bottom. And we know that Jillian's going to come out and maximize that win condition. But I do understand the angle though, Clint, because on the feet, it's not exactly the the prettiest thing for her. I guess I'm just more so of the opinion that I just really don't see this fight taking place at space very long.
Yeah, agreed. So we get to a next one. And the second fight of the night, we have a fucking banger here. We got Randy Costa taking on Tony Kelly. Clint, what are your thoughts here?
Dude, this fight is so fun. This is so fun. This is one where I actually haven't put a bet on it because I think there's a lot of questions that Randy Costa needs to answer. I think this is a spot where my gambler's intuition tells me that Randy Costa learned a lesson from his last fight against Yanez, and he probably is going to make some tweaks, maybe not come out so round one or bust. And I think he needs to do that for some longevity in his career. So I think we see him kind of turn a corner here on Saturday. But if he doesn't, he's fighting the type of guy who will not go away and will turn the tables on him late if he slows down. But he also is fighting a guy who's also like a fellow karate stylist. So if there was ever a fight for Randy Costa to go more than 3 minutes hard and keep his gas intact, this is the guy. Like, Kelly's not going to be the one diving on him for double legs. He's not going to be closing the pocket, getting into boxing range. They're both karate guys. He's going to stand about the same range. They're going to have the same style kicking game. Like, this is the fight that it could finally go a little bit long for Randy Costa. So I have a sneaky sensation that this is like Randy Costa by decision for some reason. Nothing to back that except for the hairs on the back of my neck. But I think Randy Costa ends up getting it done one way or the other.
Lags, what do you think?
So personally, I think actually if Randy does take that like toned down type of approach, I actually think it's going to hurt him in like a matchup kind of like this. Like that, he thrives in that kind of chaotic environment. So I actually think that mixing like with we saw like in the Kamaka Kelly fight, he was getting beat up real bad early. He was super hittable, whatnot. But I think the mix up of kicks from Randy's offensive attacks here, I think it'll really cause problems for him early in the first round. But again, like Clint said, if this makes it out of the first round, I would not want to have a Randy Costa minus 200 ticket. So you'd have to be betting around 1 KO really.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
I love Tony Kelly in the spot. Well, I shouldn't say love Tony Kelly, at least in relation to the price tag for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. I mean, Randy Costa has not won a fight past, I think, the 2-3 minute mark in his entire pro career. I mean, that just leaves a gambit of gigantic questions. And as someone who is always just preaching like minute winning. Can this guy win a decision? Can this guy win a decision? Just because I think it's such an important part of handicapping fights, because, you know, if that Costa win condition doesn't come, what then? I mean, the 2 extended affairs we have seen for Randy Costa, you know, he got submitted by Brandon Davis with no hooks in. Then he obviously slowed down against Yanez, and Yanez put him out. And I don't think Tony Kelly's like a great fighter by any means, but he's proven that he's pretty durable. He's never been knocked out in his pro career. He's a pretty big guy at the weight class. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. He is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu as well. And traditionally where, you know, he's dropping minutes in rounds primarily is actually coming via wrestling against better wrestlers, which we obviously know is not the game that Randy Costa plays. So I actually do think that the ground edge here does go to Tony Kelly should he decide to pursue it. I'm not overtly bullish on it, but I'm more so of the opinion that if Tony Kelly does survive the first 5 minutes, which could very well be a tall task, I think it's pretty on the up and up for Tony Kelly, as he's shown that he can build throughout the course of fights, can push a hard pace and push a hard pace for 15 minutes. So I jumped in at plus 170. It looks like some of the market has agreed with me now, and I think he's taken some monies down around plus 145, plus 150 on most books. So it's more of a questions answered against Costa, where he still has a lot of questions to answer for me, and I think Tony Kelly could very well be a decent archetype to expose that skill set of Costa.
Yeah, I'm with you, Luke. I mean, to be honest, I'm with Costa at the point that, like, if your name isn't Guido Canetti and Randy Costa is minus 200 against you, I'm probably going to bet the other side of it. And it's not even like I think Costa has a lot of potential. You know, he's a great athlete. He's a huge hitter. I actually think from a technical standpoint, offensively, he's not terrible. The problem is just like, you know, I'm sure everybody on every podcast is saying it this week, but it's, you know, his cardio, and like Lags touched on it a bit. I do think at some point, you know, he'll probably learn to control himself a little bit more. I just don't know that he has the kind of distance management and defense that's going to be necessary to do that. You know, when you pressure hard the way Costa tends to do, you know, a lot of guys, especially at the lower level that he's fighting, don't really know how to deal with pressure, how to circle off it or counter against it. So, you know, he can break guys very, very easily. And so, you know, I think that's part of it. And so with that in mind, I think he's going to continue to be a hammer if he wants to win fights or until he learns to, some distance management or defense. And Tony Kelly, look, I don't think Kelly is some stud or anything. He's a decent striker, a decent jiu-jitsu player, he's a decent grappler. He's pretty much average at everything, but he does seem durable. He's never been finished. He ate some big shots in the Kamaka fight and was never really hurt. And so, I see minus 200 next to Costa's name, and I'm just like, can I really say that he's going to finish this fight at a 50% clip at men's bantamweight? And I can't get there. And if I can't get there, I kind of think I have to bet Kelly here. I would say I have maybe Costa as the slightest of faves, but yeah, I have a small poke on Kelly. I just think until I see Costa show me that he can manage his gas tank and what's more, actually be defensively responsible while doing so, I'm pretty happy to fade him at a big number. But moving on, we have another pretty good scrap here. We got Ryan the Wizard Hall taking on our favorite fighter in the UFC, Derek Minner. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
I have a bet on Derek Minner. 1 unit on Derek Minner plus 180. I pretty much think that this is a fight that Derek Minner can win pretty much until Ryan Hall just pulls some kind of leg lock type of submission type bullshit, really, to be honest with you. I just don't think that there's a world really that Ryan covers a minus 220 favorite. I think the striking obviously favors Minner. I think obviously the offensive grappling, if Minner's on top here, I think that he could stay safe for 15 minutes if he were to do so. Obviously, I wouldn't like him to do so. I think he can keep this on the feet for 15 minutes. And obviously, this could be a very boring fight. That's how Ryan Hall fights really are. But I think if Minner stays composed, really, I don't think that his cardio is going to be a huge, it's not going to get drained really hard type of the fight that Ryan Hall usually brings. So 1 unit plus 180, Derek Minner. I think it's a good scrap.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess a different opinion for me. I think it's actually an okay spot for Ryan Hall. I'm just not a big Minner guy personally. I just think, him sticking to a composed game plan is, I think there's more evidence to suggest to the contrary, just historically how he's fought throughout his career. I mean, really outside of the Charles Rosa fight, he's kind of always been your same guy, your kitchen sink dude, whether that's on the feet or on the ground. He's going to come out there and try to get guys out. For better or for worse, he gasses, he gets finished if he doesn't get guys out early. And so it's just always really hard to assess and cap a Ryan Hall fight just because his style is so unique. But I actually think Minner's going to have some issues on the feet with Hall, to be honest. Obviously, he doesn't throw a lot, but traditionally, Hall's been incredibly hard to hit. I think even pre-Poirier fight, he only 8.75 strikes absorbed per minute in his fights, and I think that bumped up just a little over 1. But even the majority of the strikes that were landed in the Poirier fight were actually in the guard. I think he only landed 5 distance strikes on Hall in that fight as well. So I kind of think it's going to be traditional Hall outside range kicks, pitter-patter type stuff. I think that's just going to, in general, frustrate Minner. Minner's going to just go back to the well. He's going to try to wrestle Hall, and I do not see him being able to be positionally responsible on top of Ryan Hall for 15 minutes without trying to open up at certain points, trying to do things. And I think that's where he makes a mistake. And Hall is not the type of guy you want to make small mistakes against. And I think he submits Derek Minner.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know how this goes. I mean, Minner's going to look like enormous value until he gets leg locked.
Pretty much.
And I'm going to bet him, and then I'm going to yell and get into fights with people on Twitter saying, how can you not see that he was the value side here in this fight? What blows my mind with Ryan Hall is how has nobody in the UFC just been like, oh, he can't wrestle, I'm just going to calf kick him. That's it. I'm going to calf kick him and not go into his guard. No one's done it. People just, it's like Ryan Hall has magic powers that makes people fight to their least optimal ability when they're fighting against him in the octagon. I bet Darren Elkins against him, and I was like, dude, Elkins is going to fuck this dude up. And nope, he just decided he was going to stand on the outside and let Ryan Hall throw spinning shit and front kicks and be okay with that. But no, to your point, Luke, you do make a good point. I will give Hall credit. He has done his proficiency in guard allows him to kind of just do that. I'm going to drop to my back as soon as somebody gets near me, and nobody wants to go in there, which allows him to get away with that. But I do think, to kind of what I was saying, I think there's a fairly easy way to stop that, and that's doing something like leg kicking him or, just throwing punches into the guard and not going in there. Now, and so with that being said, I'm very confident that Darrick Minner can decide where this fight's going to take place, whether that's on the mat or standing. Hopefully, it is not on the mat. But I think he's the better athlete. He's faster. He's the much bigger hitter. He has much better hands. Maybe he can survive on top for a little while. I don't know. I don't really want to find that out. But it's just like he has all of the tools, if he fought intelligently, to look minus 200 here. Now, out of 30-plus professional fights, how many times has Darrick Minner fought intelligently? Once. So do I feel great about him fighting intelligently? No, not at all. But when a guy has that kind of upside in the matchup and that they have they're plus 185, I kind of have to take a small poke. So I'll be on Minner. Clint, what do you think here?
I'm kind of with Luke here. I honestly think that, you know what, if you lay out a couple of heavy bags and you have me and Darrick Minner and we start leg kicking about the same time, he'll gas out before I do, and my fat ass is out of shape. So I just don't have any faith in that man's gas tank. Darrick Minner is a straight fade for me. I am not betting his fight unless I am betting against him, which, by the way, Darren the Damage Elkins, one of the sweetest cashes I've ever had against that man. He just falls apart. And I don't think he's going to be in control positions enough for him to catch his wind the way he was in that grappling match he had a couple fights ago against Rosa. That's not going to be the case here. Hall's not going to accept bottom position like that. He will squirm, he will scramble, he will make him work, which will drain that gas tank. I'm with Luke. I think eventually this thing finds its way to the mat, and it's probably Hall by sub, or it's the slowest, awkwardest Hall by decision 15-minute fight we've ever seen. I compared him on my show to Elias Theodorou, where he does he's just going to slap him with his foot, but he's going to do it 15 more times than Minner can touch Hall. So he'll end up winning somehow, but it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, Hall's going to go 30-27 from bottom for 10 minutes. That's what's coming.
James Krause, we trust.
Yes, Team Krause. Lags and I are betting on James Krause here. We're not betting on that.
I don't think James Krause can fix this man, though. That's the problem. I trust Krause, too. I don't think anyone can fix Minner.
Moving on. God, this card is loaded, guys. I'll tell you. We got Alex Perez taking on Matt Schnell. Luke, what do you think about this fight?
Yeah, I think it's actually a decent spot for Perez, and it's ironic because I've always been actually pretty bullish on the general boxing of Matt Schnell. I think it's pretty technical. His hands are fast, but there's obviously pretty big fight IQ questions there. There's pretty big durability questions there. And I think Alex Perez is just reasonably really well-rounded. Obviously comes from a strong wrestling background, good grappler. And the problem with Schnell is I think he stuffs takedowns at, less than 50%. And often I don't think it's actually because his takedown defense purely is that bad. It's that he's a guy who's going to accept takedowns. He's going to, he's going to pull for those guillotines. He's willing to play from his back. He's locked up a couple triangles. I definitely get that. He can be aggressive and crafty if you don't mind your P's and Q's. Perez has been submitted before, but I think his wrestling is good enough to nullify any sort of that back stuff from Schnell. So I see a lot of top pressure here. I actually wouldn't be shocked if he was actually able to submit Schnell, if basically more attritional on the ground, if Schnell does slow down. And then in terms of on the feet, as touched on, I think, that Schnell might have some technical advantages, but Perez is going to come forward. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. He's actually a pretty decent kicker as well. Schnell is primarily boxing based, so he stands pretty heavy on that lead leg. I can see Perez having some kicking based success. I think the bigger shots come from Perez on the feet. I just really didn't like what I saw from Schnell in his last fight against Bontorin. He just never really seemed to step on the gas enough, and he just kind of got picked apart over the course of 50. And I don't think Bontorin's some great technical striker either, and so that kind of plays into my narrative on Perez. So I kind of think Perez has him covered in this fight, but I guess I'm not really clamoring to lay 325 necessarily, because I still do think Schnell is a decent fighter. There's just so many disconcerting things with his game at the same point.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you, Luke. It's not just the Bontorin fight either. I thought the Tyson Nam fight, my only concern with that fight was him getting nuked. And for a fight where he didn't get dropped or hurt badly, that was disconcertingly close with a guy like Nam who just doesn't throw strikes.
Split.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a fight that Schnell really should have won without very many problems at all. And And Perez, I honestly rate Perez as one of the best 3 or 4 guys in the division. Like, I mean, everybody who follows this podcast knows I bet him huge against Figueiredo. Didn't work out, obviously, but I mean, I still think he's on that level, to be honest. Like, he is pretty much, I don't want to say he's elite striking, but he's a very good striker. He's relatively powerful for the division. He's an excellent wrestler. He has an excellent top game. He has very good offensive jiu-jitsu. He's got good cardio. The only question with Alex Perez is really, you know, will he ever figure out how to not stick his head on the outside when he's attempting a single leg? You know, he does do it all the fucking time. And I do, you know, when I was looking at this fight, it was like, man, there's a part of me that wants to lay it because I really don't think Schnell has much knockout upside, and I think Perez has a lot. I think Perez has 12 minutes of top control and finish from top position upside. But, like, I don't know, man. I still think I think he's going to be completely fine. I'm with you, Luke. I think he has him covered, but I think he's loose enough with his takedowns when he gets in there and a little bit too reckless that I don't really want to lay a number like this. But, yeah, I mean, I think Perez should roll, to be honest. Clint, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we see the return of the leg kick. Schnell is so heavy on that front foot with that boxing heavy attack. Like, we all forget about Perez's leg kick TKOs. Like, this man has a nasty, explosive low calf kick. And I don't think it's going to take too many of them for those chicken legs of Schnell to start cramping up. And then on top of that, guys, people have kind of forgotten that Matt Schnell's chin is completely untrustworthy. I love this guy. I like the way he fights. I like his style. But he's been very, very risk adverse his last couple fights, and that's masked, I think, some of the chin issues that we used to see a lot of. Perez is the type of guy that will explode in quickly, and that short overhand that he's got, it'll find the mark. I really think this is Perez inside the distance, and I actually think it's Perez by KO. I'm looking at that plus 270 prop because I think he finally, you know, he's been laying off here. He's getting healthy. He's getting better. He's already explosive, athletic. He's got all the physical gifts on his side of the fight. If he wants to wrestle, he can. If he wants to ground and pound, he can. If he wants to kick his leg off and then blow his head off, he can. So, yeah, I'm all team Perez. I'm just trying to find a way to attack it. I haven't bet it yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll round it out here. I pretty much think that, you know, you guys touched on everything here. I think that a good point Clint just brought up, though, being risk averse Schnell was in these last 2 fights, I think similar to like we talked about with the Costa fight, that I think him being more risk averse actually degrades his game. I actually think him, you know, going into the fire a little bit more, even though his chin isn't great, I think it maximizes his win condition so much more. But yeah, I think Perez has some cover here, like you guys touched on. The wrestling, the striking, I think it's all going to be Perez here. I mean,
yeah, War Alex Perez. Moving on, we got a fun prospect versus prospect fight in the women's 125 division. I don't really know why they make fights like this. Like, it's kind of nonsensical. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of nonsensical in terms of the trajectory of both of their careers. But we got Aaron Blanchfield taking on Miranda Maverick. I don't have really strong feelings here. I toyed with the idea of betting Maverick earlier in the week. Ultimately, if she gets down inside minus 125, I might take the stab. I guess for me, I don't really think Maverick is the striker that people think she is. Like, I didn't think it going into the Barber fight. You know, she took a lot of shots from Liana Jojua. You know, people forget that because she won the fight, but like Jojua touched her whenever she let her hands go. I obviously bet Barber against her, and like, look, I thought Barber lost the fight, but you know, when Barber actually decided to let her hands go in round 3, she touched her up pretty good. And so I do think Maverick is somewhat of a liability there. And on the other side, you have Blanchfield, and it's like, I feel similarly. I think Blanchfield's striking is a bit more dynamic than Maverick's is. I think it's more dangerous, but I don't really think she's very likely to hurt Maverick. And I didn't really like I don't want to say Alpar had success against her. She did not, but she did touch her when she got inside. I didn't really like what I was seeing there. And in terms of the grappling, like in theory, you would think that Blanchfield has the better grappling here. And if they threw geese on, I would agree. I mean, obviously I would favor her significantly if that were the case. But I get the feeling that Maverick's a lot stronger than her. I don't really think she's going to have much success wrestling Maverick. And I actually kind of think Maverick could get significant top time against her. And like you look at, you know, Maverick's fight with, say, like Deanna Bennett. Like, Bennett's probably a better wrestler than as a pure wrestler than Blanchfield is, and Maverick absolutely grinded her out on the mat. I just kind of think, you know, Erin's really, really young. They're both really young. But Erin's kind of young. She could probably fight at 15 if she wanted to. I think she's developing. I like her ceiling a lot more than I like Maverick's. But I don't really see a coherent path for her being a favorite with Maverick, maybe a slight edge on the feet, but I do kind of think Maverick has a grappling edge here. Plus, I just kind of trust her game a bit more because the level of competition she's fought has been a little bit higher than Aaron's so far. So, yeah, I don't have a bet, but I kind of lean Maverick. Clint, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a Blanchfield believer here, man. I think she's the real prospect in this spot. I've got 2 units on her at plus 125. I actually think she's got a significant edge in the striking. I don't like Miranda Maverick striking at all. You kind of touched on it. She's a bit of a muscle monster, and I think that limits her. She doesn't seem very quick. She doesn't seem very flexible. She leaves holes in, her openings when she overextends on her punches. And Erin Blanchfield just flows, man. Her striking is actually pretty clean, especially for how young she is. And the other thing is I like how composed she is. In her last fight, I know it was Alpar, but for a UFC debut, a kid that young, like she put on a show, man. She went in there and had no problems stepping up to the moment. Like you mentioned, she's got the BJJ black belt on the mat, so if it does hit there, the only thing I'm worried about is a Miranda Maverick wet blanket, and I don't know that that's her style. Now, maybe she can come out and implement that game plan, and we're good to, Maverick backers are good to go, but we haven't really seen that from her before, so I'm not going to count on her doing that. I think that Erin Blanchfield is competitive on the ground with her, has the BJJ edge, and then I think she's the better striker, and she'll have a speed advantage. So yeah, man, I'm on the dog here. I like Erin Blanchfield.
Yeah, that's fair. And I do agree that I think Blanchfield's ceiling is a good bit higher than Maverick's is. Lags, what are your thoughts?
Not strong at all, to be honest with you. But I lean again with you, and I just think the fight honestly could just come down to the physicality of Maverick. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Luke, any strong thoughts from you?
No, not really. I kind of have went back and forth on this one, and I think the line with like a slight lean to Maverick is probably accurate. But actually our opinions are kind of flipped in the sense that I actually do think I give like a slight edge actually to Maverick on the feet. I think we have seen some improvements from Blanchfield in the stand-up. I think actually pretty clearly, if you watch her entire career, she is getting better. But I think there is some context there that she has fought pretty much exclusively nothing but grappling-based fighters her entire career. I'm not in love with Maverick striking as a lot of other people are, but similar to Blanchfield in some ways, I think there's been some pretty clear evolutions in the stand-up of Miranda Maverick, and I think she is the best striker that Blanchfield has fought to date. So I don't think, Blanchfield's necessarily going to be able to go out there and bully Maverick like she did to a Sarah Alpar, who's just a complete punching bag with no stand-up at all. So I actually do slightly favor Maverick on the feet for physicality, but then the grappling I think is interesting because I actually think Blanchfield's the better grappler on paper. We did see Jillian have a lot of success in that second round against Maverick. We've seen her have some takedown struggles in the past. I think there could be some physicality advantages for Maverick, but like I said, I think just from a pure base grappling perspective, I do think Blanchfield is the better submission grappler, and I think she might actually be able to put Maverick in some tricky spots here. So, but I think there's also some merit to potentially, wet blanket Miranda Maverick too. I wouldn't be shocked. I think you can honestly make substantial cases for both having success in both realms of this fight as to why both are value. It really just depends on how you perceive it. But I do agree with you right off the top, John, in that I don't like the booking of this fight at all. I don't like putting these two prospects who I'm reasonably high on both. I think maybe the trajectory of Blanchfield might be a bit higher, but she still has a lot of growing to do in the UFC. I think both girls do. So I don't like the fact that they're putting them together to begin with, but I'm going to say Maverick gets it done. But I do like Erin Blanchfield in general.
I almost feel like the UFC is selling on Miranda Maverick because she lost that robbery decision.
It's very strange, to be honest, because they kind of like rushed Maverick into the fight with Jillian, right? Who was ranked like I think in the top 15 at the time, and now they're immediately backtracking and throwing.
Like just 2 weeks ago, you loved this chick. Like, why are we?
Keep them apart, build them.
I agree.
Yeah, agreed. Especially because that division is so shit. Like they could both be. This could be a top 6 main event in 2 years. If they both go where they think they're going. So. But anyway, we move on to a better thing. And I think Clint's got a bet here, if I'm not mistaken. We got Andre Muniz. He's taking on Eric Anders. Yeah, boy. What are your thoughts, Clint?
So on this one, guys, this one's pretty cut and dry for me. I am not a Muniz believer, and I'm a big ya boy supporter. And we know team fight ready changes lives. I've seen some significant improvements from Eric Anders since he moved over to Fight Ready. I think he's a spectacular athlete, and that was always my big beef with Eric Anders. I said it on my podcast that I as much as I'm a fan of the guy, he's a super nice guy. I like what he does and brings to the table. Kind of reminds me, he's like MMA's version of Gronk for the NFL. He's just a fun dude. But I started fading him every single time out because he didn't do a damn thing different. He refused to move to get a new gym, to get a new head coach. He came out and had the exact same game plan, fight after fight after fight. Since he's gone to Fight Ready, he's taking advantage of his athletic gifts because they turn men into monsters over there. And then he's also improving in the fight IQ. We saw him take out Darren Stewart back-to-back, once via TKO, which nobody's ever done, and then the second time by having high fight IQ and beating him over 15 minutes. Those are the type of improvements that I'm looking for. Andre Muniz, he's got a questionable gas tank, and I know he just broke Jacare's arm, but as much as I have respect for and love Jacare, he broke an old man's arm. Like, you're not going to snap off Eric Anders. I think Eric Anders' bones are probably stronger than Jacare's at this point. So Jacare didn't tap. Jacare was winning that fight until he got his arm snapped off. And I think if the fight continued, we see Andre Muniz go to his back and slow down like we always do. Eric Anders, I think, has a wrestling advantage. I like his explosiveness. I like his power. And I think all the improvements are pointing in the right direction. I feel like the wrong guy's favored. I got a shot on your boy Eric Anders as a dog.
Lags, what do you think?
I will say there's only really two things I have issues with Eric Anders, because I agree with Clint. I do love him a lot. But the two issues I have with him, he doesn't throw a lot, and his IQ is absolute horrific.
It's improving.
I need to see more honestly, just more improvements from him. I just need to see more fights out of him before I start backing him, because I played him pretty big against Jocko at plus 135, and an absolute horrific game plan from Eric Anders. So
and he still almost won the fight.
He just needed to let his hands go. Horrible game plan, and he just needed to let his hands go. So
I was there too. I can't believe he lost that fight.
So yeah, have at it, Luke.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, so I played Anders here. It's a really binary fight. I don't think there's an in-depth breakdown. I guess somewhat different from Clint. I want Anders nowhere on the ground here. I think he needs to avoid it like absolute lava. I've actually been a Muniz truther in the sense that I think the guy's underrated based on certain matchups he's had. I've actually bet him and backed him a couple times and cashed on him. I think he is a very, very high level black belt. I think the levels in the grappling between these two are massive. However, Eric Anders stuffs takedowns at 78%. Even the times he's been taken down, he's very difficult to hold down. He's shown some decent defensive responsibility in terms of getting to a hip, digging underhooks, wall walking, that type of thing. And I just don't think Muniz is a great wrestler, and as much issues as I've had with Anders in the past in terms of his general output, pacing and whatnot, Muniz does fuck all on the feet, like absolutely nothing. He defends strikes at 45%. Like, if there's a guy I feel confident that Eric Anders, like assuming he wins this fight, is able to stay upright, if there's a guy out there that I'm confident Eric Anders is the better striker then, that he can outpace, it's against an Andre Muniz here. Like, I think this is I shouldn't say like a great matchup for him, because like I said, obviously the ground component's very, very volatile and dangerous here, but I do think he has the takedown defense to kind of just implement a very basic sprawl and brawl, boxing based game plan. I think he's going to be the guy going forward, landing the more impactful shots. I think he's potentially live for a knockout in this spot as well, if not to actually just do more. So if he cannot make small mistakes on the ground in the event he does get taken down, or in the event he can just stuff everything from Muniz, I think, Anders has, minus 233 upside in this fight. So I was willing to get involved at plus 120. I think this line should be flipped.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about betting Anders, if I'm being honest. I was almost certain I was going to bet him at plus 150, and why I didn't pull the trigger and thought it would get better, I don't know. I don't usually make mistakes like that, and then it dropped to plus 120, and I'm a little less bullish there. But I don't really disagree with what any of you are saying. I faded Muniz huge with Jacare, who broke his arm in that fight, which was really unfortunate. I really didn't think there was any chance that Jacare was going to get subbed from bottom. To be honest with you, I think I said on this podcast it was like an under 5% chance.
I think you did.
It did not age well. God, I was on him breaking his arm, Weidman breaking his leg, and Connor breaking his leg. It was
I was also on Cruz breaking his leg too against Smith.
You poor bastard.
But yeah. So it's been so that I don't know. The thing is, I've never particularly rated Muniz. I think I faded him on Contenders when he fought Taylor Johnson. Subbed him from guard. I faded him with Jacare, subbed him from guard. I'm like reasonably certain he's not certain. I'm reasonably confident that he's probably not the better wrestler. I actually rate Anders grappling a good bit. For a guy who came from football, he's got pretty good instincts on the mat. He's got fairly good jiu-jitsu. It's funny that he goes to his wrestling in the wrong fights. Like I laid -200 on him against Khalil Roundtree, and he decided to just stand there and get kicked for 15 minutes. But I do think, he has all the tools to look big favorite here. And it's like, I agree with you, Luke, on the feet. Yeah, Anders' biggest problem is not being busy, but I don't think it's a concern here. He's probably the better athlete. I think he's definitely the better boxer. Muniz isn't offering anything that he's not going to be able to make reads on or hasn't seen in the past. So, the volume's not as big a concern for me, and I think he's definitely the harder hitter by a good margin. It's just the one fear for me is I haven't been able really to find much data on what happens when a really serious jiu-jitsu guy gets on top of him. He fought Brendan Allen regionally, but Allen was 20 and Anders just muscled him around. He fought Gerald Mearshart, and coincidentally, it's like the only fight of Mearshart's career where he didn't at least try to grapple. So it's like that's kind of like a big deal, if like a high-level black belt gets on top of you, how will you react? And like a +150, I was like, I definitely would take the stab here because it's like I'm more okay with being wrong at 40% implied because, I don't really see a way Muniz can be more than 55 or 60%. But when you're like 45, 50%, you're getting closer to pick. It's like, well, Muniz does have favorite potential if it turns out he can just dominate him there. But yeah, Anders is the better athlete. He's the better wrestler. He's the better striker. He should win this fight. I just, that's my big reservation is what happens if Muniz gets on top of him. Because I don't really know. And I don't really have a confident prediction, But anyway, moving on. We'll go with you, Lags. We got our boy, the Beverly Hills Ninja, taking on my bane, Bruno Silva.
This fight's going to be funny for as long as it lasts, to be honest with you. I think that this fight is for sure to go under 1.5, and that's what I have the bet on. I have a 1.5 on the under 1.5 -150, and I actually have a small poke on the Beverly Hills Ninja to win in round 1 at +850. Given that I just think that's his win condition, I think that these guys are likely going to bang, and I think one of these guys is going to fall. Obviously, I believe that Silva should be the rightful pretty big favorite just based off, I would say, durability, even though he is quite hittable. He is quite hittable, don't get me wrong. But I think that in this matchup particularly, I think Wright is much more fragile. So we're Beverly Hills Ninja, under 1.5. Do it for
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not a Bruno Silva guy at all, to be honest, but I'm really not a Beverly Hills Ninja guy. The fact that he's won 2 UFC fights just makes me disgusted to even think about, to be honest with you. I don't think he's a UFC caliber fighter. I think Bruno Silva is a pretty decent archetype, at least what's given Wright problems historically. A big power puncher who's, got like a 90% finish rate. He's going to come forward, let his hands fly. I think it speaks nightmares for Wright. I guess I'm kind of with the crowd in the sense that I think Bruno Silva comes here and knocks him out in the first round. I'm on the under 1.5 here as well at -150, but I'm not on any Silva KO prompts because I do give some slight sneakiness to Wright. Just throws a lot of weird, funky shit. He's a decent grappler. We have seen Silva get his back taken on like 5 different occasions now. Maybe he clips him with a wheel kick or some shit like that, then goes out there, jumps on his back. Maybe they get into a clinch transition against the fence, jumps on him there, rolls for a leg lock or some shit. He's just kind of one of those weird guys like that. So I'd like to, at least cover the base in the sense that some of that bullshit happens. I don't think it's very high percentage, but nonetheless, I'd like to cover that base. It's just a fight I don't really see getting past that, 7.5 minute mark, probably like 70% of the time, just based on the style dynamic.
Yeah, so I've lost 4 figures fading Bruno Silva this year. I'm planning to maybe lose some more this weekend, if I'm being honest. We're gonna, but yeah, honestly, like looking at this fight, like I get it. I get what's to like about Bruno Silva. He's a huge hitter, and Wright seems very fragile. Like no doubt about it. But like my fundamental view on Bruno Silva's game hasn't changed a whole lot. He's all physicality and not a lot of skill. He's very, very hittable himself. He can't grapple. And, his striking is really just kind of blitz forward to you. He can't cut the cage at all, really. Like you look at, I know it's easy to compare the Buckley fight to this, but Buckley actually does a very good job of cutting guys off. Like you don't really see Buckley swing and go past guys. You see Silva do it all the time. And so like the Buckley fight, Wright acquitted himself well. The problem is, Buckley stalking him like a fucking panther, and they're just at some point he was going to catch him. Wright, I think, is built a lot better to beat Silva than he was to beat Buckley. And the thing is, like, Wright, you don't really see Jordan Wright go and exchange in the pocket with anybody, really. He tries to play the outside game, counter if he can, throw a lot of kicks. And if you get him into the clinch, then he has a pretty good clinch game. And so with Silva, it's like he's not going to get a pocket fight, so he's going to be kind of reliant on blitzing forward. But like I mentioned, Wright's going to try to he's not. I wouldn't say he has like great ring craft by any means, but he isn't going to back up right to the fence. He will try to move out of the way, and I don't think you have to be that savvy with your movement to get out of the way of a lot of Silva's blitzes. Like you look at the Sanchez fight, and like Sanchez was like half dead in the third round of that fight, and even then. Look, Silva's a big hitter, but he didn't even take Sanchez out on the feet. It basically was a standing KO, right? But yeah, I mean, look, he could definitely take Wright out. Don't get me wrong. I just kind of think, look, if Wright tries to grapple, he probably won't because he never does. He has a huge edge in the grappling if he goes for it. He certainly has, and unlike Andrew Sanchez, Wright actually has a dangerous top game and can submit you from those positions. In the striking, like I said, I think he's going to win the fight at distance until he's not. He's going to play the outside game. He isn't going to give him a brawl. And if Silva does blitz him and end up in the clinch with him, I think Wright's better in the clinch. And so it's like, yeah, I get it. Bruno is a big hitter. And if he clips Wright, he's probably putting him out. But also like plus 285 on a guy who probably is more skilled just about everywhere the fight's going to take place. Like, I have to play that. I'm not playing it huge, and I do think, the hardware factor is a big one. Obviously in this division, you have to favor Silva. But, like, I don't think minus 300 is crazy to me. So I like Jordan Wright here. Clint, what do you think?
So I'm a Bruno truther. I've been on him since he got to the UFC. Like I love the just physicality and raw power. I'm sorry, like bro, I hit the round 3 prop against Sanchez because like clockwork, Sanchez comes out sucking wind in that 3rd round. I knew that was going to be the magic number for us, and that's where Bruno, he's just so damn durable, man. Like he's not great, but like you mentioned, like Sanchez could wrestle him for 12 straight minutes. Didn't fucking matter because he's not going to hurt him. He's not going to do anything to him. And then Bruno's going to pop him one. Like that's what you can count on with this man. The problem is the Beverly Hills Ninja is the perfect description of a glass cannon. He is so fragile. And I swear he could beat Francis Ngannou if he had a 5-second head start. Like he just can't take a punch. But you know what happens with cannons, guys, is sometimes they go off. We've seen him clipped and hurt, and we have seen him flatlined, and it's terrifying me. I think this is the bed shitter of the week, if I'm being honest. I talked about it on my show that I was like, this is Bruno KO, this is Bruno KO, but the under is the better play. Well, sure enough, I bet the under, and the longer this week goes on, guys, I'm staring hard at Beverly Hills Ninja by sub at 10-1. Because I'm like, I went back and I rewatched that Sanchez fight. He goes down so easily. And he turns his back immediately. And you know what? The Beverly Hills Ninja is a big dude at this weight class. He's not some scrawny little thing. If Bruno gives his neck up, I really think he's going to have a backpack on him that he can't just stand up out from under like he's been able to do before because of the raw size and physicality of a guy like the Ninja. So I've got my big bet, 1.55 units. I got minus 155. I was just a little behind my guy Lags there. But I've got the under 1.5. I don't see this thing going past round 1, but shit, that 10-1 sub prop on the Ninja, I might be sprinkling because I think that's honestly his best path to victory. Nobody knocks out Bruno. So maybe a club and sub, maybe he gives up his back, maybe he rolls the wrong way. But I definitely think that sub upside is there.
That's a really nice number. Yeah, I mean, Jordan Wright beat the shit out of Gabriel Checo from top position. Like, the guy knows what he's doing down there, you know? So let's hope. I really hope. Beverly Hills Ninja, let's go.
I'll be putting him in a couple DK lineups, let me tell you that.
Absolutely. We got Augusto Sakai taking on Bam Bam, Tai Tuivasa. Clint, what are your thoughts here?
This is another one where I feel awkwardly confident. I don't know why. So my main play on this one is the over 1.5 at -135. And it's really funny, actually, because there's a lot of people after I tweeted out that play that are like, bro, like, that's terrifying. That's so, and I'm like, really? Like, is it? I feel like it makes sense. I mean, if you go back and you watch these guys historically, they're both kind of over guys. Like Tai Tuivasa, if you drag a bum off the street and throw him in the cage like Harry Huntsucker, yeah, he's going to get him out of there. But when he's facing a higher level, more skilled fighter that's technical, those finishes don't come nearly as quick. And a guy like Augusto Sakai was going 25 minutes with Alistar over him. Not only that, he was looking damn good against Alistar over him until that savvy switch flipped on and over him found the chink in the armor, the weakness in the game. So that guy's built to go 25 minutes in the championship rounds. And he also is not a KO guy. Like, as much as people like to think Augusto Sakai is this big power puncher, he's a volume guy. And Tai Tuivasa's got a brick head. Like, he can take a beating if he wants to. I think this is going to be Tai Tuivasa getting outclassed on the feet and outmoved on the feet by Augusto Sakai, who likes to stay on the outside and really avoid his opponents until he has the favorable engagement. And I'm eyeballing Augusto Sakai by decision at 3-1. I like him at -110. I'm surprised it's a pick'em. I think there's some recency bias on Tai Tuivasa here. I'm tempted to bet him straight. I thought the over 1.5 is the safest play on the thing. But I'm still looking at I'm still looking at Augusto Sakai, and I'm definitely looking at Augusto Sakai by decision.
Lags, how about you?
Well, I thought the over 1.5 was the sharpest play on the Rosenstruck fight with Sakai too. But quickly,
Rosenstruck is around one when he wants to, though.
See, that's the thing too. I think Tai has the chance to force big exchanges here, and I think that the leg kicks are huge early in that first round. I think he does hit pretty hard. I think obviously in that first round, obviously the cardio severely tapers off, but in that first round, I think he's going to give Sakai hell here, honestly. And I just didn't like what I saw in that Rosenstruck fight. So I think Tai absolutely has the chance to put him out in the first round, but outside of that, I think this fight becomes very close if this ends up going 15 minutes. So it's a pass for me.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, no real strong opinion. I think Sakai is obviously the more skilled fighter, 100%, but kind of to Lags' point, I'm not, I guess, really in camp over 1.5 here. I think Tai just fights in a way that forces big exchanges pretty much every single fight out. And really the fights that have hit the cards for Sakai, are against Arlovsky and Ivanov, who play, mid-range outside base pretty games. So you're getting like more of a moderately tempered kickboxing type match against those guys. Those are the fights that are hitting the cards for Sakai. But I mean, we know that Tuivasa is a bull, man, and he's got those big leg kicks too. I just think we're going to see some bigger exchanges in here, not to mention that both guys defend strikes like fucking shit. I think it's like 51% for Sakai and 50% for Tuivasa. Still a heavyweight fight at the end of the day. Both of these guys have shown power. Both these guys have shown finishing upside historically. I actually think we see somebody go out moderately early here. And I think it's actually probably Tuivasa, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with Clint here. I actually like the over a good bit. And I don't really, and I don't really mind GTD either. Honestly, like, I think a Tuivasa KO probably looks something like he completely compromises Sakai's legs and finishes him late when he has like nothing left in him. I am with Luke that I do kind of think if there's like a standing KO with them exchanging, I kind of think it would be Sakai doing it. Like, I don't think Sakai has a durability issue, to be honest. Like, he got finished on the mat by Overeem. Now, Now, he has a grappling issue, but I don't think that's any danger here, to be honest. I think we all agree with that. Yeah. But like Rozenstruik's one of the biggest hitters in the division. And it's like, how much can I really take out of that? Not really a whole lot. Look, Sakai, and on top of which, in that fight, now it might have just been Rozenstruik, but Sakai really fought really conservative. That if he fights here, it's almost certainly going to go 15 minutes. So I like the over. In terms of the fight itself, like, I really don't rate Tuivasa at all, but leg kicks do seem to be like a cheat code in the sport right now, especially at heavyweight where nobody fucking checks leg kicks. So that is kind of a concern, but I think skill-wise, neither guy has great defense, but I think, Sakai's is a little bit better than Tuivasa's, and I think Sakai measures distance a bit better than Tuivasa does, to be honest. So I kind of slightly edge him. But yeah, I like the over. I mean, even if you were to contextualize Tuivasa's KOs, like he finished Hardy, but Hardy hurt him and dove in recklessly and just got clipped coming in. Hunsucker is
sprinted into that punch.
Yeah, exactly. And like anybody at heavyweight's getting put out. Andrei Arlovsky could put someone out like that if he lands that on somebody, on top. And like, look at the fight before that, Harry Hunsucker. What can you even take out of that? The guy, I think he fought at like weighed in at like 215 on Contenders. Like he's not a big guy and he's terrible. Tuivasa not really. I mean, he has finished guys, but he didn't have a finish for like 5 straight fights before the Struve fight against a historically fragile guy. And on the other side with Sakai, it's like, yeah, I think he can finish him. But like we've seen Ty take some fucking damage too. I mean, the Ivanov fight, he got wobbled a bunch and he's a tough guy. He's going to keep coming. The other times he's been finished was on the mat by Spivak and, JDS, which was also on the mat. Now maybe Sakai will take him down. It would be smart, but I don't think he's much of a wrestler. Yeah,
he might grind him up against the fence though, which is taking more time off the clock.
And to be honest, if he eats leg kicks, there's a good chance that's what he's going to do. To be completely honest with you, I don't know. I kind of think Tuivasa has never struck me as a huge hitter, and neither is Sakai. I agree with Luke to an extent that the pace is going to be high here, but for 1.5, like I would have this closer to like 2.5 under like -125, not 1.5 -140. Like 7.5 minutes, I'm pretty happy to gamble on that, to be honest. Yeah. So moving on, we have another banger. We got Pedro Munhoz taking on Dominic Cruz. Lags, what do you think?
I think Pedro Munhoz should be a bigger favorite here, honestly. I have a 1.5 on him at -110. I think he's got all the power upside. I think he's going to be the one moving forward in this fight. I think he's got the finishing upside. Obviously, I don't think this fight's going to finish, but obviously all of the finishing upside is in his corner. I just think the leg kicks are going to be huge here in this fight. It's really going to slow down the movement. I mean, we saw in his last fight with Casey Kenny. We saw Dillashaw as well. I think Munhoz is a great spot here.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything Lag said. Ironically, like going in, I actually thought I was going to bet Cruz, to be honest, and I went back and I taped it. Yeah, I think those kicks are going to be big. I think it was stupid for Kenny to stop throwing them, after the first round. But even in other fights, we saw Cejudo have some success there. We saw Dillashaw have some success with them as well. So it's not the only fight that's happened. And if you notice in a lot of those fights too, I mean, Cruz is known for his movement. But when guys have started to get off on him, that man, he's not bouncing in and around as much as he usually is. He's not moving his head nearly as much. And we know Pedro, despite his hitability, the dude's crazy durable. He's going to be a zombie. He's going to go forward. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. And to Lags' point, the primary finishing upside also sits in the favor of Pedro Munhoz. I think he has optical-based considerations as the guy going forward in this fight as well. So, it's not something I think Pedro should be like, -200 or anything here, but I think he should probably be like -150, 60%, given the style dynamic. Coupled with the wrestling, we've obviously seen Cruz land some takedowns here and there, but his control rate shit, and Munhoz stuffs takedowns, I think, at like 87%. He's got that really nasty guillotine to threaten to that most guys don't even want to mess with to begin with. So I don't really see, much wrestling based upside for Cruz either. So yeah, I like Munhoz at pick'em here as well.
Yeah, so like 5 years ago at -110 aside, I 100% would have bet Dominic Cruz here. I bet Cruz against Casey Kenny at +125, and I remember in the lead up to that, I was like, are you guys fucking insane? Like, what is going on? Cruz is going to 30-27 him with no problem. And like Kenny is like the classic linear fighter, can't cut up the cage, basically tailor-made for Dominic Cruz. And I thought Cruz won the fight clean, but it was close, and it was way too close, to be honest with you. You touched on it, Luke. Kenny stopped throwing the leg kicks, but either way, he was still finding success. And like Kenny is fairly plotting, very linear. He's literally tailor-made for Dominic Cruz, and Cruz basically had to panic wrestle the last 3 minutes of that fight to win the decision. That's massively concerning to me, especially against Munhoz, who, people call him a plotter as well. And I guess to an extent it's true. The thing is, I actually think Munhoz cuts off the cage pretty well. His bigger problem is defense. It's not like they're not exactly the same, but Frankie moves a bit like Munhoz. And obviously he won that fight and he had some success offensively, but it wasn't like Pedro was having issues getting shots off at him. Pedro was cutting off the cage just fine. It's just that, the optics are bad when Frankie's stepping in, sitting down on a 1-2, and Pedro's defending it with his face, as opposed to Dominic Cruz, who's not going to sit down on anything. I don't really think Cruz might make him swing at air a bit here. I could see that happening. I can picture it. But I do think I'd feel more comfortable in a small cage, to be honest. But I do think Munhoz is going to cut off the cage okay here. I think the leg kicks will be big. I think on minutes it's going to be close, if I'm being honest. I guess that's for me is the thing. I have a small bet on Munhoz. I think if it goes to cards, it's probably a fairly close fight one way or the other. What kind of separates it for me, though, is I think Cruz's chance to finish this fight is almost non-existent, pretty much as low as it can possibly get for men's MMA. Cruz, not a big hitter to begin with, not much of a submission game to threaten, not like he could sub Pedro anyway. And, and Pedro is stupid durable. So I don't really think Cruz, I won't say he can't finish, but I think it's very, very low outcome. Whereas Pedro, I don't want to say he has considerable upside. Not many guys have finished Dominic Cruz. I think Cejudo is the only one. But I do think Munhoz has reasonable finishing upside. And so it's if I think it's very close to even if it goes the distance, and I think there's a massive edge in finishing upside to Munhoz, which I do, I kind of have to have him as 55-60%. So at minus 110, I'm going to take the stab. But if he doesn't finish Cruz, I think it's going to be a pretty sweaty fight, to be honest. Clint, what do you think?
I'm right there with you, man. I have not bet this fight yet, but I lean towards the Munhoz side for all the reasons that you guys just kind of laid out. One thing I noticed with Dominic Cruz is the footwork is kind of gone. He really relies more on his head these days than his feet. And because of that, his legs are far more stationary than they used to. And I think the leg kicks are going to be there all day. I had Casey Kinney in that last fight, and I really thought that it was close, and I was hoping I would get the nod. It was a justifiable split decision, I feel like, so I'm not going to cry too hard about it. But one thing we know about Munhoz is that he will not stop that leg kick. He will continue going back to it if it's something that he's having success with, and I think that could be a big problem. The other thing is at the end of the Casey Kinney fight, he really was kind of figuring out the timing of Dom's head movement, and he was starting to pop him with some big shots. If Munhoz gets him with one of those wing and hooks that he throws after he starts to get the timing down, this thing really could be over. I think the finishing upside is all on Munhoz. I'll go ahead and say it for you. I don't think that Cruz has any finishing upside in this fight. My only concern is, like you said, the volume, the activity. If he doesn't get the finish, he's going to have jabs skipping off of his forehead for 15 straight minutes, and we know the judges love that. So it's super close. I am tempted on Munhoz. I haven't bet it yet. That's the side that I'm kind of staring at, but something's keeping me from pulling the trigger. So I might end up on it with you guys by Saturday. Definitely like the side that you're on. Just haven't bet it myself yet.
Yeah, fair enough. So we move on to another banger. We got 6 more fights, and they're all fucking awesome, to be honest. We got Josh Emmett taking on Dan Ige. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like Josh Emmett in this spot. I think it's actually one of my biggest bets on this entire card. I disagree with the line move, and it looks like it's pretty much been all one-way Ige, and actually more Ige money's coming in. So I've slightly botched the line. I got some, I think, minus 162, but I think he's down to like minus 150 in some places. I understand it from some perspective. Ige is kind of a zombie. He's going to go forward. He's a tough guy. He's hard to finish. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. But I think the real big difference in the fight between these two is the hand speed, footwork, and then overall finishing upside. I think Josh Emmett, his general lateral-based game is almost elite. I think he plays the game really, really well. I think he's the better defensive fighter in this fight. Obviously, there's a talking point. He's coming off the knee injury, but he took enough time off. It seems like he's fine. He actually says his knee's stronger than his other one, the one that he actually tore. So I think that's encouraging to note. But Ige just pretty much is one of those guys that's touching, he plays that zombie game, but he relies on his toughness. That's not really the archetype I think, that you really want to be when you're fighting a guy in Josh Emmett who hits as hard as he does. Despite his durability, I really wouldn't be shocked if Emmett could put Ige down. I just don't think he has the athleticism. I don't think he has the speed. I don't think he has the general skill set to give Josh Emmett much issue here, coupled with the fact that when we've seen Ige on bottom, he looks like shit. Emmett does come from a strong wrestling background. He's, prototypically not the guy to wrestle, so it's not necessarily something I can bank on or have it being a big factor in the bet, but it doesn't change the fact that I think it's still a path for Josh Emmett here as well. Not to mention that he was able to pretty much go strike for strike with Shane Burgos on one leg, who's one of the more higher output guys in the division. Who's a pretty talented boxer as well. So I think it's a great spot for Josh Emmett, a guy who I might also add is historically probably one of the most undervalued guys in MMA betting history. Guy has been consistently undervalued, and he's 7-2. So I like Emmett.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mostly agree with you. I think Emmett's the superior. Well, it's weird, right? Because I agree with your take kind of on the technical aspect of it, but also Emmett's output against Burgos was such a massive anomaly when compared to basically the rest of his entire career. He landed 127 significant strikes against Burgos. I don't know if he ever landed more than 50 in a fight prior to that. And if he had gone back a couple fights ago, you had the Michael Johnson fight where he landed like 22 strikes across 14 and a half minutes. So it's weird, but I mean, if that Emmett shows up, yeah, I mean, I think he should be a big favorite. I mean, obviously you have to give him the edge when it comes to power and when it comes to just, winning the exchanges optically. Look, he's one of the not just the biggest hitters in featherweight in like UFC history, pound for pound. Like his knockdown rate is, I think it's like 3.5%, which is like heavyweight levels. It's honestly absurd, to be completely honest. And yeah, I mean, he does have a wrestling path if he wants it. I mean, Ige gets stuck on his back by anybody that puts him down. I mean, Kevin Aguilar held him down for a bit as well. The problem for me is like I mentioned, the Burgos fight was kind of an anomalous to his entire career. And then you have Ige, who has basically skated by on durability. Now, this may be when it cracks. He's gotten hurt before. It's gotten hurt in a few fights. But the guy is very reliable to come forward and put out a very, very, very high output on you, which I wouldn't really be too deterred by in betting this fight if it was 2 years ago. But Emmett off an ACL tear and 36 years old, look, he may be the same fighter, and if he is, then this line is definitely not wide enough, and it's great value. But also, featherweight is such one of the more speed-reliant weight classes outside of obviously flyweight and bantamweight. But like when it starts to go, it goes in a hurry at that weight class. Now, maybe it's not going. I don't really know. But if let's say he is slower and he's not maybe connecting as hard, Ige outworking him for 15 minutes is a very live outcome. But with that said, I do have mild interest in Emmett. I'm kind of hoping the number keeps coming in and gets down to like the -125, -130 range. I just do think, I can't look at the fight and say, okay, I know Josh Emmett's going to be the guy that we last saw, 20 months ago or whatever it was, because I don't know that off, the surgery and kind of him being 36 years old. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to tools, Emmett should be the superior fighter here, in my opinion. Clint, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Luke on this one. I actually have a lot of interest in Emmett, and I've been watching this one very, very closely. I may end up jumping in sooner than later. It's one of the rare times where I got line movement right in the market, and I have been keeping tabs on it since. It does look like what's been going on is every single time Emmett gets in the ballpark of -155, that's when the resistance comes in and it starts heading the other way, which tells me there's smart people out there that like that number, and that's when they're jumping in. So I don't know that it's going to go much shorter than this. I might take -160 because I can get that at this phase. I just think that even if Emmett's not quite what he was, he has a higher ceiling than Ige ever did. I'll be honest, I'm not sold on Ige. I think he's got a very simplistic style. It's good. He's good at what he does. He's a great guy. He's entertaining, and he's been getting by on that durability, like you said. Eventually, that's going to let him down. Emmett is the most explosive, hardest hitter in this division. And when you go 1-for-1 with your opponents, that is not the game plan for dealing with Josh Emmett. On top of that, Josh Emmett is a solid wrestler. So I don't know that Ige, as much as he's got good timing on his level changes, I don't think he's going to be able to out wrestle this man to cause him a problem. And even if he is outworking Emmett on the feet, we have seen the optics before where the guy hitting, look at Jose Aldo just last week. It was one shot for every 15 of Font, and it didn't freaking matter because he was hurting Font every time he hit him, and the judges knew he was winning the fight on a 1-to-15 ratio. So that's kind of what I feel like we might be able to see here. You look at the stats for Dan Ige, he averages 3.82 significant strikes a minute, absorbing 3.41. So, I mean, it's nearly 1-for-1 on his shots. You just can't have that game plan going in against Josh Emmett. If you take one to give one with Josh Emmett, you're going to drop at some point. So I like Josh Emmett. I like it a lot, and I'm more than happy to stand in front of this line move. I'm waiting for my spot to jump in.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm excited for this fight, to be honest. It's going to be a banger for as long as it lasts. Moving on, though, we got Sugar Sean O'Malley. He's coming back, taking on Raulian Paiva. And I'll be honest, like, I've faded O'Malley a few times, and, like, I'm still generally looking for spot. There are spots in the future that I will fade him. Like, if I got Ricky Simone in there against him as a dog, I'm definitely going to take the shot on it, right? I think you have to.
I mean,
if I got Vera,
Eddie Wineland, right?
I would not bet Eddie Wineland again. That's the. But you know, I'm just saying, like, there are guys in the upper echelon of the division that I would bet as big dogs against O'Malley. This isn't it, though, to be honest. Like, I wanted the tape for it. And I was like, I really, thought, I'm gonna like Paiva here, but it's so hard for me to see where he wins this fight. Like, if you kind of like sum up Paiva's career, I'd say he's mostly just been like kind of a size bully. Like, that's what he was at flyweight. That's kind of what he is at bantamweight. The difference here is he's fighting the biggest bantamweight in the division. O'Malley's got 3 inches of reach on him, 2 inches on him, and is built just as big as he is. On top of which, O'Malley measures distance much better than Paiva does. I don't think Paiva cuts the cage off particularly well. And O'Malley, like I said, does measure distance well. I've seen people say, oh, look at the Moutinho fight. He was walking him down. To be honest, I kind of think the people that are like, Chris Moutinho fight was a bad look for Sean O'Malley can get fucked if I'm being – I have been as anti-Sean O'Malley as it gets. Literally as anti-Sean O'Malley as it gets in the UFC. But like –
You'd like my TikTok.
The dude landed 230 significant strikes in 3 rounds. Round 3 of that fight, he was getting walked down. I know he was breathing heavy. He was still throwing fucking smoke late in the 3rd round of that fight and finished Moutinho late in the 3rd round. So it's like, can I really judge him because Moutinho just wouldn't die? I mean, not really. He did get him out of there eventually. And I look at this fight and it's like, could Paiva grapple him? I mean, I guess. And Paiva's a good grappler on top, but I don't think he's much of a wrestler. I don't think when you look at, when O'Malley's fought this level of fighter thus far, and by the way, I do think he has fought this level of fighter before. Like, would anybody confidently bet Raulian Paiva as a favorite against like Teco Quinones? Like, I wouldn't personally. I think that's actually a fairly similar matchup. Now, obviously that fight ended in a second, and I don't expect this to, but like, I just struggle to see, I don't think Paiva's going to be able to close range enough to wrestle much. And I don't really think his wrestling itself is very good. The guy has had issues outstriking Zhalgas Zhumagulov. He got outlanded a distance in that fight. His only really good performance in the UFC was Kai Kara France. And look, I bet him last fight against Kyler Phillips, which first of all, that decision was crazy. But second of all, look at that fight. He was getting his fucking ass kicked until Phillips gassed out because Phillips can't help himself but throw spinning shit basically constantly. You look at that and it's like, okay, it's good he won. Yeah, he's durable. Yeah, he keeps coming. But he didn't really show anything where I was like, man, he's got the tools to take care of O'Malley here. Honestly, O'Malley's probably going to hang on the outside and just hit him as much as he wants until he either puts him out or wins 30-27. I think Paiva pretty much needs to finish him to win this fight. It's extremely difficult for me to see him winning a decision, unless it turns out his wrestling is leagues better than I think it is, but I don't think that it is, to be honest with you, or we would have seen a lot more of it in the UFC. I mean, this is a guy who was going to split decisions with Alan Nascimento 2 years ago. I think there's actually probably value on the O'Malley line at minus 300, which is crazy to say, but like the tape says it to me. You look at the stats, they are so enormously one-sided. It's almost unbelievable. Yeah, I just don't see it. I think Paiva needs a finish, but I think O'Malley is going to style on him for as long as it lasts. Clint, what do you think?
So I am right with you in the O'Malley hater camp. I have 3 TikToks on my account that are over 25,000 views, and all 3 of them are mocking Sean O'Malley in some way, shape, or form. Triggering his fan base is the key to success, folks. His fan base is the new McGregor fan base because they come at you in droves if you go after their boy. So I do it and then sit back and laugh hilariously as the comments scroll in about how much I'm wrong and how stupid I am for doubting the GOAT. And it's just hilarious. I would love to bet Paiva against him here. And kind of the opposite of you here, though, Fox. I think he does have the skill set that he could beat Sean O'Malley relatively comfortably. I don't think he's got the fight IQ. He just doesn't go to the grappling. He just doesn't go to the wrestling. And the defensive issues that he has striking, the way he overextends on every single shot that he throws, like that's just going to be a cakewalk for Sean O'Malley. As much as I want to give Sean O'Malley shit, he's an incredible fighter, and I'm not blind to how good he is as a striker. So yeah, he absolutely is going to roll in this spot, in my opinion, unless Paiva went through nothing but a wrestling boot camp and is going to come out here with a singlet on and put him on his ass. That's the only way he wins this fight, in my opinion. I do think Sean O'Malley is going to piece him up. I do think Sean O'Malley is going to knock him out.
Vags, what do you think?
Echo both of your guys' sentiments as well. I have a unit on the under 2.5 minus 130. And to be honest with you, I think the only reason to not go heavier is just the fact that it seems like Paiva's, tough and durable in some instances, but like he's just so damn heavy. He doesn't move his head, and he's just so slow plodding and coming forward. He's going to come forward all this entire fight, and I think that's going to just put him right in danger of those strikes.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much hit on all the main points. I got 4 units on O'Malley at minus 280 here. Probably my most confident take of the card. I just think that forward pressure, zombie-based nature, you kind of hit on the point, John, of, kind of him being a size bully. We clearly saw that not even be the case in his first fight at, 135 pounds. I don't think he's going to have some of those same physical advantages, and just relentlessly going forward, not moving your head at all and throwing strikes is not the way you're going to beat Sean O'Malley. It's actually probably the worst way you can possibly fight Sean O'Malley, if I'm being completely honest, which is what makes me so confident. Sean's stance switching is seamless. He's fast. He's powerful. Dude throws rockets down the pipe. If there's a guy to go out there and put out a Paiva for the first time, it's O'Malley. I'm probably actually going to add on to O'Malley inside the distance around evens. I just don't see him being able to survive against O'Malley. And despite him never being KO'd, to your point, he was hurt a shitload in the Phillips fight, and I would pretty clearly say that O'Malley's a bigger hitter than Kyler Phillips, in my opinion, at least in terms of general pure punching power. So I don't see how Paiva wins minutes in this fight.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, we got a banger here, folks. We got Kai Kara France taking on Cody Garbrandt. Clint, I think you have a fight as well here.
I do. This was the first play of the card that I made because now, while I'm an ironic hater of Sean O'Malley, I'm an actual hater of No Love Cody. So I go against Garbrandt's chin every opportunity I get, man. And this is a spot where I did jump in early on Kai Kara France. I got plus 150. I just think that line is dumb. I got plus 2 units. I got 2 units, have plus 150. One of the biggest things I actually think is going to be the problem for Garbrandt is not so much his chin, but I think he's lessening his advantage by dropping a weight class. The boys at 125 are fast, and they never stop coming forward. So he's used to being the much quicker guy. He is used to having a speed advantage. I think that's going to be gone on Saturday. So I don't know that Kai Kara-France actually ends up knocking Cody Garbrandt out, but what I do think is he can actually win minutes against Cody Garbrandt and outwork him on the feet. So I think Cody Garbrandt is going to have a little bit more trouble hitting his opponent than he's used to. I think he's going to have punches coming back at him faster than he is used to. And God forbid if we have a TJ Dillashaw situation with him dropping a weight class that he's not used to being at, his already fragile chin might get cracked by a guy who hits pretty hard at 125. So yeah, I think this is a decent coin flippy type of fight for him, and I'll take Kai Kara-France at plus 150.
Lags, what are your thoughts?
I actually don't think it's a bad spot for Cody coming down to flyweight, to be honest with you. I actually think that Kai is somewhat hittable in the pocket coming into his entries, and I think that just he's going to maximize Cody's opportunity, I guess, to have that type of firefight. Like, I don't think that Kai doesn't have some kind of great jab. He's not some kind of like unique striker here, really. I think that this is more or less like a fairly coin flippy type of fight, and I think that Cody has a decent chance to win this fight just based off the power. And I think actually that his hands are still pretty fast. Maybe his speed overall is slowed down a little bit, but I think his hands are still pretty fast.
Yeah, fair, agreed. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Legs. I think if the cut goes fine for him, I think it's an okay spot for him. I mean, the reality is this Kai Kara-France's best win is probably Paiva, which doesn't really say a whole lot to me, but just given kind of what my breakdown on Paiva is, with my breakdown on O'Malley and the bet there. And for as much as people talk about the whole Cody chin, I mean, Kai's been dropped 3 times in the UFC too, so it's not like the kid is invincible at all. And it's pretty clear and fair to say that Cody's going to be by far the biggest hitter that Kara-France is going to face. So
that raw dog spinning elbow would nuke the chin of Cody Garbrandt. Just saying.
I'm just saying. Well, I'm just saying in comparison to like I just think that everyone is just in camp that Cody is going to get knocked out here. I guess I'm not necessarily convinced. Maybe the move to 125 is horrible for him. Who knows? Which is why I'm not betting it. I just think there's some unknowns in that capacity. But Garbrandt has been fighting elites. Yeah, I think he should get the job done more often than not here.
Yeah, I am also leaning in the Cody direction. I haven't decided if I'm going to bet it yet. I want to see if more money comes in on Kai. It's kind of weird, and this is going to be some serious mental gymnastics, guys, so bear with me. But I felt really bad about Cody post the Font fight because I was just like, that was such a weird performance. He looked like a broken fighter. You know, Cody's traditionally done such a great job at suppressing output, and Font was able to just get off constantly without taking anything back. And then I watched the Aldo fight last weekend, and Font did the same thing to Aldo, just that Aldo caught him and actually hurt him a lot more than Cody did. But I was like, oh, wait, no. It's not that Cody doesn't suppress output anymore. It's that Rob Font's a fucking crazy person who is not fucking afraid of what's coming back in his face at all. Now, look, don't get me wrong. There is an output gap here, and it does make me nervous. I really, really don't like betting favorites against somebody who is going to reliably throw more strikes than they will. But what I will say is it's like you look at Cody's last 6 fights and you go, beats Dominic Cruz, fights TJ Dillashaw twice, almost beats him the first time, gets knocked out the second time, then fights Pedro Munhoz, then fights Rafael Assunção, then fights Rob Font, now fights Kai Kara-France. One of these things isn't like the others, if you guys get what I'm saying. You know, it is an enormous step down in competition from the guys Cody has been fighting. I do think it's a close fight on minutes, but traditionally throughout Cody's career, outside of the Font fight, you know, even the Dillashaw fight, he was winning minutes in the first Dillashaw fight pretty cleanly before he got knocked out. The second Dillashaw fight before the big exchange that he got finished in too, again, it was competitive on minutes. He was competitive on minutes with Pedro Munhoz, who's output like crazy. He was winning minutes against Rafael Assunção. He won the first round against Rob Font. So it's like I get all of the limitations, and they worry me too with his output and him being competitive on minutes, but he has had a habit of managing to make fights close and using his power to kind of limit exchanges, on top of which, you know, if they do exchange and decide to test chins here, I feel pretty good about – I don't want to say about Cody winning that fight. He could certainly get put out. He could definitely get put out in that fight. But I do want to be on the side of the guy with A-level power rather than the side with B-level power. Yeah, I mean, I think Cody should be like minus 150, minus 160 range just because I do think he hits a lot harder. I think he's a lot more proven. He's fought much better, or he's had success against much better competition than Kai has. And at the end of the day, he's the bigger guy. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. And if he loses to Kai Kara France, I think it's time to hang the old gloves up, to be honest. And I'm a Kai fan, but the reality is this is a guy who's seen championship highs. Where does he go from here if he loses to Kai Kara France? Is he going to be fighting like David Dvorak on like the prelims and then losing that fight? You know, like what? Where do we like that? That's where we're at with Cody Garbrandt. So I like Cody. I think he's going to get it done this weekend. It's not like my most confident take ever, but I'm contemplating a play on him. I do think it's a decent buyback spot on Cody after a pretty brutal loss to Rob Font.
If I could jump real quick, one more thing. I'll be clear. I like my bet a whole lot more at plus 150 than I do at plus 115. So like there's a lot of line value, I think, on that number. And then the other thing about Cody is this is more of a not a hardware cap, but like I think he's a confidence guy, and I honestly think his confidence is a bit shot. And I'm curious how that's going to look on Saturday. Obviously, we're not going to know until the fight actually gets rolling. But he's such a bully. He's such a brash dude that wants to get in your face and talk shit. And you know what? He's gotten his ass kicked 4 out of his last 5 fights. And if it wasn't for the meme KO against Rafael Assunção, like I know he was winning that fight, but like who knows? You know what I mean? So I almost feel like him, you know, throwing the towel in and dropping to a new weight class to a guy that acts and talks the way he does. I feel like that might be a little bit more mentally damaging than people are letting on. Again, me just kind of pulling at straws here, tinfoil hat coming out. But I'm almost worried that we're seeing the fantastic fall of Cody Garbrandt, like right in front of our eyes.
No, you might be right, honestly, and I agree with what you said. It's a line thing. Like I wouldn't have played Cody up at minus 175 where he was, but
and I wouldn't bet Kai Kara at plus 110.
Right, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, we're betting numbers, not fighters. So, but anyway, moving on. We have another great fight here. We got Jeff Neal taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. Lags, what do you think here?
I got to bet on Ponz here. 1 unit minus 110, and I guess. I don't want to say it's as simple as this, but I would say for me at least, it's as simple as it's where Ponz's durability at. Because I think that he's a much better proven striker here. I think that he has all the tools to tool Jeff Neal for the course of 15 minutes here if he doesn't find a finish. But I mean, I can't lie. Jeff hits hard. He's got a fast straight left hand. He's got a fast left high kick. But I think Ponz should be able to use that in and out movement, use those leg kicks, and win a decision there if he doesn't finish him late.
Yeah. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, I like Ponz. I got 2 units on him at minus 110 here as well. I guess the main points for me is that we've seen Ponzinibbio beat more mid-range to outside guys before, and pretty decent ones in that. You know, Zach Cummings, Nordine Taleb, Neil Magny, Miguel Baeza, Sean Strickland. You know, he's beat these type of archetypes that's very similar to Jeff Neal, and some of those guys I'd say are even better. The dude comes forward, he throws a lot. He's probably got one of the best jabs out there, really good straight right, big kicks. They do have a common opponent in Neil Magny, not to, you know, do the whole wiki cab thing, but I mean, Ponz beat the living shit out of Neil Magny, and it did not look so good for Jeff Neal against Magny in his last fight. So I think that's one of the things that Neal struggles with is just general effective pressure, whether that's going forwards or going backwards. If he can't kind of get into that rhythm, he's really going to struggle. And I think that's probably one of the best things that Ponzinibbio does is he's just going to disrupt that rhythm. You know, he's going to constantly go for it. He's going to take some shots in there too. So I definitely don't think Neal is drawing dead. I don't think Ponz should be a gigantic favorite here. I just don't think he should be pick 'em. I think about 60% is more accurate. I am a little concerned with how low that Ponz does leave that hand. It is a southpaw orthodox nature matchup. We've seen Jeff Neal hit some of those head kicks. He's got a decent hook game. So him knocking out Ponz wouldn't be shocking by any means, but I think Ponz is the more reliable minute winner here. Not to mention a dude who has a ridiculous knockdown rate as well and who has a ton of power. So, you know, him putting out Neal, I don't think would be, shocking either. The guy can get after it. So kind of similar to the Munhoz fight, not like stylistically, but just one of those spots where there's 2 guys that pick him who I think should be slightly favored and not be at pick 'em prices. So I was willing to get involved.
Yeah, I think it's a somewhat complicated fight, to be honest. Like 2 years ago or even a year ago, I would have considered a play at Neal at evens, I think, just based on the data that I have about Ponz, I should say. Just because I think I'd cleanly favor peak Pons against Neal probably, but I actually do think Pons has declined a fair bit. I bet him big against Paiva, but I didn't really think he looked great that fight. He just kind of figured out 4 minutes in, oh, wait, I can just walk forward and jab him and he can't do anything to me, and then proceeded to do that. I didn't think it was a great look at that fight in general, though. And on the other side, stylistically, Pons does have a tendency to keep his hands low. You touched on it, Luke. The southpaw orthodox part of it, he does keep his hands low. And Neal, he throws everything right down the pipe. It's a lot of 1-2s that come at you hard and fast, right down the middle. And that's scary for me. It's very scary betting a -110 and potentially going in that direction with Pons. On the other side, though, I normally, when people tell me guys have regressed, I'm usually like, okay, you're probably wrong. You're just not paying a close enough attention to the level of competition they've been fighting. I don't think this is the case with Neal, though. It's funny because I watched his fight with Magny first and then his fight with Bilal Muhammad after that. And he's just a different fighter. I mean, the reality is, look, Magny's my boy. I've bet him routinely in the UFC. But, I think as a technical striker, Bilal is probably the same level, if not better, than Magny is at distance. And he lit Bilal up like a Christmas tree. You watch the Magny fight, and his shots seem slower. He seems sluggish. He just couldn't get shots off. He was giving up a ton of free volume. And, he did that in the Wonder Boy fight, but I'm like, oh, it's Wonder Boy. Like, you can't really hold that against him. But then you have Magny, who's, I don't want to say classing him at distance, but look better than him at distance, which should not have happened, in my opinion. Like, him at his peak from 2 years ago, I don't think that does happen to. And it's like, well, could he be declining at his age? And it's like, well, he had a bunch of physical health issues that were wrong with him. His kidneys shut down. He was in the hospital for a couple months. He has not looked like the same guy since. He basically said that after the Magny fight, that he just wasn't 100% anymore. And then on top of it, look, I'm not a narrative guy ever, pretty much. But you get a DUI a week out from your fight, like that is, you're in fight camp and you're getting fucked up. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I'm just saying, we just saw Kevin Lee make his whole big deal about being an alcoholic, but not during fight camp, and now he's out here getting arrested. And it's like, well, so I think he's regressing and clearly something is going on with him. Look, I think theoretically it's an okay style matchup for Neal, but the reality is, Pons has beaten better opponents. He's fought better, a much harder strength to schedule. He's a smart fighter. I do think he has some openings that Neal can capitalize on. But I do think, and like Luke, you said it too, Pons is a pretty big fucking hitter as well. I think I have to favor him like 55-60% here. I'm debating whether to poke it. I probably should have played it at -110 now that it's at -130. It's just, I don't know. I don't like what I've seen from Jeff Neal recently, so I don't really want a part of it. Clint, what do you think?
I mean, you kind of said it all there, man. I was going to get into the mental side of it and the DUI and all that stuff, but you touched on that before the end of it too. So like, I don't really have a whole lot to add to the breakdown. I think if you rewind time, a year and a half, 2 years, I'm betting Jeff Neal here in this spot all day at a pick'em. I think he's younger. I think he probably hits a little bit harder. He's got the higher ceiling, but just like I was talking about Cody, and honestly, maybe to a greater degree, he's falling apart. I think his confidence is completely shot, and he's a one-hitter quitter power type of guy, and he goes his last couple of fights without a knockout. Not only that, but gets schooled in one or two of them. Like, I just think he's completely in a different place mentally, and the fact that he's getting drunk and arrested for an armed DUI the week before the fight, it's like, okay, gun, no big deal. This is Texas. Everyone has a gun. My florist has a gun. Props to anybody who gets the quote. But the DUI is the problem. I want to see in the chat, by the way, if somebody picks up on the quote. But I just really think that says a lot about where he's at mentally speaking. I'm curious if he's even going to make weight for this fight. Like, there's a lot of questions. And Ponzi, on the other hand, is all about that comeback. He's rip-roaring, ready to go. Showed us that he's still got it in his last fight. I had to take the shot. So, yeah, I got 1.1 units at -110. I'm rolling Ponzi.
Yeah, fair. We move on. We got the co-main event of the evening. We got Amanda Nunes taking on Juliana Pena.
All right, John.
Could it be a banger?
Light the campfire, John.
We'll see.
All
right, I'll start here, man. Well, that's fine. Does anybody have the balls to bet Juliana Pena? Maybe. Honestly, look, I'm not going to come out. I'm not going to come using God's telling me to right now. Don't say it. I'm not going to come out here and say Juliana Pena is necessarily better than Amanda Nunes in any aspect of MMA. I don't think that's the case. What I do think, though, look, you want to look at Nunes' career, and she's got, 10 or 11 KO round ones. She has not gone into the second round very much. You look at the fights she's won by decision or won late. The Rocky Pennington fight, she just had nothing for her, really. And Pennington also hung out on the outside in that fight and let her pick her apart. The Felicia Spencer fight, Felicia Spencer hung out on the outside, didn't make her work. You look at the GDR fight, though, that goes deep. Nunes completely gasses out in that fight. She's fortunate that GDR has nothing off her back and gets dominated on the mat there. We've seen her slow down against Shevchenko twice. We've seen her, when she has been forced to really push it and redline it and her opponents have survived, she hasn't looked great. Look, she's one of the best, probably the best female fighter ever, at least by what she's accomplished at any rate. But the reality is she does have flaws. The difference is, we talk about it on this pod all the time. Physicality is such a huge aspect of WMMA. And when it comes to physicality, she is God, basically. That's just the reality. But Juliana Pena, look, what I'm looking for in someone to potentially beat Nunes, if they can't out-technical her, which not many can, it's someone who's not going to fuck off. They're going to stay in her face for the entire fight and, will keep a pace on her and can compete in the grappling. I know Pena can compete in the grappling. People may forget this. Juliana Pena was tossing Valentina Shevchenko around before she got submitted by an armbar when she fought her several years ago. If you look at how she's going to probably approach this fight, unless she just decides she's going to do the Felicia Spencer and hang out in distance, in which case she's fucked. It doesn't matter. Nunes has that effect on people. Her power does. But if she fights like she fights every other fight, look, she might not survive the storm. There's a very good chance she is going to die viciously and early in this fight. I am prepared for that eventuality. If she survives the storm, though, survives 10 minutes and keeps pushing a pace on her, I honestly think she has a chance in the second half of this fight. The reality is Nunes, I don't think when she's tired, like she was gassed out and getting put in weird spots by GDR. If she gets that tired, I don't think she's going to be able to control Pena, and I think she could end up in some really bad spots. Like I said, I think Nunes has a very strong chance to finish her very early, but I think it gets pretty fucking greasy if she doesn't KO her in the first 10 minutes of this fight. Look, I am not saying Pena. I think Pena has a good chance to win this fight. What I am saying is the implied odds are about 14% right now. I think it's closer to 25%, that she could win this 1-4. I think that's in play. I will not be big on Pena at all. Obviously, I'm not a crazy person, but I do think she's worth a poke. I do think if you were to give me someone other than like a Valentina Shevchenko or a Holly Holm who could give Nunes problems, it's someone with Juliana Pena's style who is just going to stay in her face and make her work. So, yeah, I'm going to poke Pena. Clint, what do you think? You going to join me here?
Well, first off, I think the chat is uncultured. Nobody got the line. It's from Miss Congeniality, folks. One of the most underrated movies of all time. If you haven't watched it, that's your homework for the weekend. Sandra Bullock is a national treasure. So I'm actually with you a lot on this, John. I talked about how terrifying it is to me to lay -900 and throw that as the sprinkle on top of your parlay donut. It's kind of a spot because, like you mentioned, Pena is the exact type of fighter that I would put in the cage against Amanda Nunes. If she doesn't finish, I think she does, but if she doesn't finish, the rest, this is a 25-minute fight, folks. Like, if she doesn't get her out of there in round one, and there's just a little less pop on her punches in round two, and Pena starts working her way back into it, and then round two is over, and they pull out the stool for Nunes, and she starts breathing deeply on it, all of a sudden, all bets are off. Like, she has a hole in her ground game, and her gas tank is something that we've seen have problems with before, especially when grappling. I actually think I sprinkled GDR in that fight. That's like the one time I've taken my shot against Amanda Nunes, and I might be with you on Saturday, man. I think that I might look at this more of a live betting opportunity because Pena is not going to finish Nunes in round one. And she's going to be swollen and purple if she survives round one. So we might get 15-1 instead of 9-1 on her at the end of round one. So I might be sprinkling this thing live. And I hate to go against the GOAT. I tried once against Khabib and never heard the end of it because how dare we ever bet against the best fighter in their prime. But we've seen every single one of these champions except Khabib go down at some point. Anderson Silva ran into a bad matchup once and his leg snapped in half. Like, it will eventually happen. Somebody will beat Nunes, and this is the type of bad matchup where I think it's possible. And if she gets on top of her late, don't be surprised if she like viciously TKOs or submits her when Nunes just doesn't have the gas to hang anymore, because that's kind of what Pena does, is she ramps up the longer the fight goes, whereas I think Nunes slows down.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, Clint. I also do think the live angle is a nice way to look at it. Lags, what are your thoughts?
Not a super strong take here, really. I like the under 1.5 at +100. No play for me, but mainly because also I when targeting totals in general, I like finishing aspects from both sides. Obviously, I just don't think Pena finishing, like Clint said, obviously Pena finishing early is very, very small percentage, and don't think that really happens at all. I think Nunes KOs are at a very high outcome very early.
Yeah, fair. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I really want no part of betting. I really don't. I hate betting these type of fights. It's like betting a Shevchenko fight where it's like
bet the KO or the
you're almost just trying to get like too cute and try to pick how the lamb is led to the slaughter per se. It's like I don't. I just feel like
when you bet KO and they win by sub, it's real painful when they're both even money.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's not one of those situations I really want to be involved in. But what I will say from the Pena side, if you are to better, just bet it live. Because I think Nunes' round 1 right now is about a 40% implied outcome. So like if that is your take that, you think she's potentially live later, I would 100% just wait to live bet it, because you're significantly taking out, the most likely outcome is Pena getting absolutely mollywopped in the first round here, which is my official prediction too. I think she closes distance like shit. Nunes hits like a truck at least when it comes to the grappling. Juliana Pena has been out grappled in pretty much every one of her fights for at least the first half of like all of them. Kat Zingano tossed her around. Nico Montano out-wrestled her in the first. Obviously, Sarah McMahon had success early too. So obviously she's kind of played a bit, more of the comeback kid, and tough grow is not going to go away. So I understand that, from some perspective, but I think even a very tired Nunes can just get takedowns and just lay on her. To be completely honest, worst case scenario. But I just really hate Pena's striking defense. So I like Nunes to KO her.
Hey, Pena round 3 is 50-1, round 4 is 65-1, round 5 is 75-1.
What?
So maybe with those stupid numbers, you just chop half a unit up into thirds. Do 0.2 units on rounds 3, 4, and 5 at 50, 65, 75-1. You're risking less than a unit, and that's her best win condition. Even live, she's never going to get to 75-1. So, hey, sprinkle, baby.
I like it. All right, we're moving on. We got one of the best main events of the year. We got Dustin the Diamond Poirier coming off of breaking my heart twice in a row, and KO and Conor McGregor twice fighting Charles Oliveira. Clint, what are your thoughts here?
My thoughts are Dustin Poirier owes me money, man, because I've made some of the sharpest over bets on his fights the last 2 times out. And I swear, when they started grappling in round 1, I was like, boys, this is the easiest money I've ever made in my life, because round 2, they're not going to go quite as hot as they started round 1. And then Conor stands up with 8 seconds left in the round, and my heart sank. Like the second he got to his feet, I went, oh no. Like I could just feel it coming. So I'm on a little bit of a miff here with Dustin Poirier. This is a phenomenal fight, but I'll be honest with everybody on the show. If you haven't watched my stuff before, I am awful at betting Charles Oliveira. If I bet on him, he loses. If I bet against him, he shows up and he wins. I've been the guy that said he had heart issues and he has a tendency of quitting, and he's gone on the tear that he's been on recently. I think I can poke a ton of holes in his resume. I know his last win for the belt was solid, but it was a guy who isn't tested really at the UFC level, hasn't done well at the UFC level, even though he's fighting monsters and had his moments. I think Dustin Poirier is the uncrowned king, and based on his resume, what he's done, all the people that he's fought, he is the rightful favorite in this spot. But Oliveira has the youth advantage. He's got the size advantage. And if he has fixed those quit type issues that he used to have when he was a younger man, I mean, we could be in for a tough night here with Dustin. The problem is I think Dustin wins wars of attrition. So it's one of those things where Oliveira's got to finish him early, but he's fully capable. I don't have a bet on the main event. I don't know if I'm gonna have a bet on the main event. It's such a good fight. If there was ever a fight that you could watch and not need the gambling action on, this is probably it. I've got a weird, just again, this is back of the neck, hairs standing up type of feeling, though, that Dustin Poirier takes this kid late. I really feel like he's going to try to drown him in the deep waters in this spot and see if he can make him fall apart with his pace, with his pressure. And I'm too scared. I'm too shell-shocked to go against Charles Oliveira again. I think it's disrespectful when the champion is the underdog with the belt around their waist. So even though I think Dustin Poirier is the rightful favorite, that situation just has never ended well for me. Like Tyron Woodley, for example, was an underdog in every single one of his fights until he fought Kamaru Usman. The one time they made him a favorite is when he went down hard. So like that's where I can kind of see this thing here, is that this fight could go a lot of different ways, and it's extremely hard to get a handle on how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that take. Lags, what are your opinion here?
So I will say I agree with Clint. I think there's a lot of ways that this fight could play out, but I don't think there's a lot of ways this fight plays out where this fight doesn't start for the fourth round, which is what I have. I have 3 units on the fight doesn't start round 4 minus 152. I mean, obviously on the Oliveira side, the guy's never seen a fourth round. The guy barely sees third rounds. The guy's an amazing finisher. And then on the Poirier side, the guy's known for taking out guys late. But the thing is here, I mean, you touched on it, Clint, obviously with Oliveira having his best chance of finishing the fight early. I think he probably has those first 2 rounds of getting finished. And if not, I think that mental aspect is actually going to rear its ugly head, because Chandler really, even though that was, people will call that like a dog fight, I don't think that's the dog fight in the sense that Poirier brings that type of like dog fight mentality, that super durable guy. You got to pretty much choke him out to get him out of there, which Oliveira is perfectly capable of doing. But I think Charles has probably about 10 minutes to get a finish here. Otherwise, I think Dustin takes over and probably finds a finish as well.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
All right, so what's the odds that Dustin Poirier jumps guillotine on Charles Oliveira?
Oh God, too good, honestly. Like that,
Even money.
I think Magic made a tweet about this already. I think earlier in the week, he's like, "There's guaranteed bet he's going to jump guillotine this week."
I swear to God, I'd lose my mind if I had a bet on Poirier and he did that in this fight. But yeah, it's a pass for me. I think it's an okay spot for Poirier, but the reason why I can't do it personally is that he just hasn't fought a lot of really great grapplers, to be completely honest. We have seen him give his back up before, which is definitely a concern, because obviously you just can't make small mistakes against a guy like Charles Oliveira. But I think he's also going to struggle to get Dustin down. I think obviously Dustin's the much better boxer. I still do think there is a bit of quit in Oliveira when the going gets a bit tough. We obviously know Dustin's going to come forward, chuck heat. He can take a shot. Whereas, even with this crazy run that Oliveira's on, and I do think his boxing's actually improved quite a bit since his early run in the UFC. All of his fights are ending, largely pretty early, or there's a lot of heavy grappling involved. So we really haven't, I guess, really had to see that heart tested all that much, obviously outside of the Chandler fight, which I think definitely needs to be noted. But yeah, I guess I've always been probably lower on Dustin, which is horrible to say. So I don't want to say like, oh, now he's up at the top. Now, now I'm coming around, flipping my opinion, being Mr. Bandwagon. But the guy's a tough son of a bitch, and he's not going to go away. So I'm more so the opinion he knocks at Oliveira, because I do still think there are some defensive striking issues there. And Dustin's put out, much better guys, at least in terms of the general striking. So I think he can do that here. But I'm just really, like I said, not trying to lay, minus 170 when I think there's still some definite grappling questions and grappling issues when he's fighting the best submission grappler in the history of the UFC. I really wouldn't hate anybody, taking stabs either way, depending on what your confidence interval is for either side.
Yeah. So my initial reaction to this fight was kind of like, I love Dustin and I'm going to be on him big here. And then and my initial reasoning was like, he held up okay against Khabib in the grappling early. Khabib took him down, got dominant positions, but he managed to stay alive and work up. But the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, I got to see how he did against other grapplers. And you kind of touched on it, Luke. He really, outside of Korean Zombie, who's obviously not that good a grappler, who he fought when he was 22, and Khabib, who's the best grappler ever, he hasn't really fought any mid-range grapplers. And so, like, I generously say he held on okay against Khabib. Like, he lost the first 2 rounds dominantly of that fight. You know, he worked up, but he lost them dominantly. And the reality is Oliveira is a much more dangerous submission grappler than Khabib is. And so my question is, like, what percentage does Oliveira get him out of there early? Because I do think if this fight gets extended, Dustin is going to break him and finish him. I do think, even though Oliveira's striking has improved a lot, I think Dustin is significantly better on the feet than he is. But I think Oliveira is going to get him down. And it's hard for me to put a number on it. Like, I sort of think the line is right-ish, maybe could be wider, because Poirier is a black belt. He should be able to fight hands okay. It kind of reminds me of the Paul Felder fight, to be honest. And what we saw there was Paul Felder or Oliveira running Felder through the entire series of submission attempts early in that fight. Felder basically surviving and then finishing him when he quit or didn't have gas left or whatever. I think he's going to get – and, like, what I asked myself when rewatching that, I'm like, you know, if they ran that fight back in that same manner a bunch of times, he probably subs Felder a lot of the time in that position. Like, he had some deep darces that if they weren't as close to the fence, he is 100% subbing him there. I kind of think it's going to be similar. I think early in this fight, unless Poirier KOs him in one of the opening exchanges, I think Oliveira is going to put him in some really dangerous spots. Like I said, I think Poirier's got decent submission defense. And so I edge on the side of him surviving somewhat significantly, a good portion of the time, and then taking over the fight. But I won't be shocked if he doesn't and he gets finished here at all by any means. And it's also possible that Poirier's tendency to kind of give his back and put himself in vulnerable situations to work up gets punished in a way we haven't seen it get punished here by Oliveira. So, yeah, I favor Poirier. I think it's possible there's value on the line. If it turns out he's just an elite defensive submission grappler, then it's going to look like huge value. But yeah, I don't know. I think Oliveira's going to have grappling success early in this fight. And if I think that, it's pretty hard to stomach a minus 165 bet. This is a fight where I think I'd rather get involved in the live line because I think, look, maybe I'll miss the bet completely and Poirier KOs him in the first round. But if he doesn't KO him, I think he's going to get put in bad spots and we might get a decent plus number on him. And I have this feeling with Oliveira, I kind of agree with you, Luke. I still think there's some quit in there. And on top of which, I think Oliveira, I doubt he has the cardio to push that kind of a pace for more than 10 minutes, to be honest. And so we might see a real tipping point here where it's like Oliveira is minus 200 after 2 rounds. And I think that might be a decent chance to jump in on Dustin. But yeah, it's a great fight. And Clint, I think you also nailed it too. You know, it's like if there's ever a fight you wanted to sit back and enjoy, you know, this is the one, man. Like, this is going to be fireworks one way or another. Plus, we need vengeance for Conor. I want to root for Oliveira here. I don't really want to root for Dustin.
You know the quadrilogy is happening if Dustin gets the strap, right?
Not.
Conor coming off of injury. If Dustin's got the belt, it's happening.
I really hope not. But Dustin deserves it, I guess. So the belt. So anyway, yeah, that's my take. Guys, I want to thank you again, Clint, for coming on. You want to shout your shit out?
Hey, first off, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been awesome chopping this thing up with you guys. 1, 2, 3. There's only one of you left that hasn't come on my podcast yet, and we're set up for next year. So looking forward to having you on the show, man. At Diehard MMA Pod on Twitter, if anybody wants to follow me over there. And then, of course, I go live every single Monday breaking down the fights with a special guest every single week. More often than not, it's one of these Club and Sub boys. You guys are regulars on the show. So just a really amazing card, and this was a fun time breaking it down with you guys. So again, thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Clint. And as usual, saying goodbye, we got Lags at Danny_Lags, Luke at Sparring_ or SWR MMA, right? SWR. Fuck, I am gonna go. It's a rough one right now. And John at MMA Fox. Guys, good luck on your bets this weekend. If you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We'll be back for the finale of the year next Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern. Best of luck, everybody. Take it easy.